Welcome to the Dance is Medicine podcast. My name is Sophia. I'm a neuroscientist and dance healer, and I've created this podcast for dancers to share their stories about how dance has helped them heal from various health problems. Today, the episode is going to be a little bit different. Today, we're going to address why dance sometimes is not as beneficial as it should. And this comes down a lot to toxic dance environments, non-inclusive dance environments, and the fact that dancers' mental health is not paid attention to. So today's guest is Terry Hyde, and he has been doing so much work for dancers' mental well-being. So today, we're just going to discuss why is mental well-being important for dancers, what can be done, what are the challenges, and if you are listening, what can you do for yourself? And if you are a teacher, what can you do for your students? So I hope you enjoy this episode, even though it's a little bit different, but I think it's important to access and pay attention to the other part of the Dance is Medicine. So Terry, would you like to introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your amazing work?
Hello, Sophia. Yes, I am a psychotherapist. I have a master's degree in psychotherapy, and I do see dancers, but other performing artists as well in therapy sessions. I also hold, I present workshops for vocational schools and dance companies. This is a proactive view. So obviously I work in a reactive way with therapy sessions, but the workshops are a proactive way for schools and dance companies to help support their students and dancers. So this is self-care. This is for looking after themselves, to have a greater understanding of what mental health symptoms are and how to deal with them, what the triggers are. The link with what I'm doing for dancers and performing artists goes back to when I was 6 years old. That's when I first started doing ballet classes. From there, at age 10, I won a 5-year scholarship to the Royal Academy of Dance. And then straight after that, I went into the Royal Ballet Senior School, after which I joined the company, the Royal Ballet Company, and spent nearly 3 years there, and then joined as a soloist English National Ballet. It was called London's Festival Ballet in my day. It changed its name in the mid-80s. So I was doing soloist and principal roles in the company. I wanted to do more. And after about 3 years, I decided during the summer break to go and audition for a UK tour of West Side Story. That's the best show that I've ever done. It's absolutely incredible. The emotions throughout were wonderful. Anyway, so I did. That was a 3-month tour. London's Festival Ballet asked me to guest for their Christmas season because they hadn't replaced me, which was just after the end of the West Side Story tour. But after doing the guesting for that season, that Christmas season, I thought, no, I don't want to go back to this again. And I was doing musicals in London's West End, which is the equivalent to Broadway, in film and on TV as well. And after that, I retired. And when I retired, I set up a business management organization to look after people in show business. And so I ran that, built it up and ran it for 15 years. And during the time, the clients, not all the clients, some of the clients would start offloading all their issues onto me. I've obviously got that type of face that you can sort of, yes, I'll offload all my stuff onto him. But so some of them did that, and I just had no idea what to do with all this information and all these emotions that were coming out. So when I sold the business, as I said, 15 years later, I trained as a psychotherapist, so it's quite late in life, because I wanted to know more about what to do with these people that were just offloading on me. And that was in 2012. No, it wasn't. Yes, it was 2012. And it wasn't until 2016 when an ex-dancer came to see me, having been discharged from a psychiatric unit with bipolar disorder, that I thought, having treated this person, I thought dancers need this. Dancers need someone who understands them. Then I started researching and finding out, went to meetings with One Dance UK and IADAMS, the International Association for Dance Medicine Science, and found that physical health was paramount and mental health was lost in a corner somewhere. And the dance science is all to do with physical health. And I thought, this is not right. There needs to be a parity between the two. And so I remember in 1968, when I was in the Royal Ballet, we were on tour in Stratford-on-Avon, and I pulled a thigh muscle. And the company manager phoned the local physiotherapist. The physiotherapist came in and said, okay, well, what have you done? And I told her, and she said, well, how did you do it? And I showed her. She said, what did you do that for? And I said, that's part of my job. And they'd had no idea about what dancers do, what athletes do. But now, in the last 15, 20 years, that dance science has really developed on the physical side, but not on the mental health side. So I'm hoping that your listeners, and if they're going through a transition into a period of time where they think, well, maybe I'll give up, I'll retire now. Maybe instead of going and doing physical health, they'll come and learn about mental health and become counsellors that understand dancers. So when you look at schools now, vocational schools, a lot of them do have counsellors there. But I've had so many clients come to me, either students from vocational schools or dancers, professional dancers, who have been referred to counsellors and psychotherapists. I said, well, what's helped in these sessions? And most of them say nothing really, because they don't understand. They don't understand a dancer's mindset. And that's the issue. So hopefully next year, I'm going to get together a course, a CPD, a continuing professional development course for counsellors and psychotherapists, and maybe even psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, etc., for them to understand what dancers have gone through since the age of 3 sometimes, with a very black and white thinking, especially the ballet. Irish dancers are the same, ballroom dancers are the same. You're either right or you're wrong. There's no grey areas. There's more grey areas in contemporary dance, and tap dance. But I think for the ballet, the Irish, the ballroom, it's very and South Asian dance as well. It's very particular, and it goes back. The history goes back a long way. So history has to be held together by the pedagogy. But unfortunately, going with that are the old school teachers. And there are still old school teachers, very bullying, very, you need to be tough in this business. And therefore, that they are really hard on the students. And that's only because they've been taught that way. And you think, well, what issues are you bringing into, what issues are you projecting onto the students that the students are then soaking up? And I know I'm digressing here, Sophie, at the moment. I'm sorry about that. So, but I'm very passionate about helping to support dancers, whether they're students or whether they are professional dancers. So I apologize if I've jumped the question.
No, not at all. I'm here delighted to hear all of this because I totally agree with you. And I think it's amazing, your story, that you you something had to change, and you went all the way and did your education in order to help the dancers in things that you saw that weren't being helped with. And I think that's just, that on its own, it's amazing. And then I totally agree with that. Even nowadays, the focus is on the body. The research focuses on the body. Healthcare focuses on the body. And we completely forget about the mental aspects, and from my side of the coin, the brain mechanisms behind all of this. So I think it's really important, the work that you're doing, um, because we need to make the change. We need to be the ones making the change. And I have been in meetings with organizations as well, and I've noticed how this is still, the focus is still a lot on the body, and then you mention brain, and it's just like, oh yeah, actually, yeah, we should be paying attention to this, but nothing ever really happens. So I wanted to ask as well, because you have such a long history in this, way more than I have. um I wanted to ask you, what were the challenges that you face, in the meanwhile, all the way through? Because I'm sure it wasn't easy peasy to just, hello, mental health, and it's there. So, what were the challenges you faced, and how you overcame them?
What I want to say, first of all, because you mentioned about the brain and the physical body, there is an intrinsic link between the mind and the body.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
I found, both in the general population and more so in dancers, that they hold on to physical ailments.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll understand this. So if there is an injury, and the injury takes longer to heal than it would normally do, the physiotherapist or the physical therapist would look at it and just say, okay, well, it's taking longer. Well, in my mind, it's taking longer because they're holding on to something. They're not dealing with something that has happened
Absolutely.
in the past. And
Absolutely.
that needs to be dealt with. And I really need to try and get that across to physical therapists, so that referrals to mental health therapists who understand the situation and understand the mind-body link and understand dancers will start dealing with that healing. And as well, in the general public, there are those many ailments that doctors aren't able to diagnose. They say, well, I don't know what's wrong with you. Here's some painkillers. Or here's some antidepressants. Actually, no, the body is trying to tell you something, and we won't listen. And especially for dancers, our minds and our bodies are telling us, actually, you need a break now. Take a couple of days off. Don't no Pilates, nothing at all. Just take a day off. Walk in the countryside, speak to non-dancers, and that is never listened to, because right from an early age, from age 3 or whatever age you started dancing, if it's an early age, you have been taught to push through your pain, push through your emotions, put your emotions in your rucksack and leave it outside the studio. I don't want to hear about anything like that while you're in class. And that is the old school way.
Yeah.
Right. I got
Sorry,
that off my chest. Now to answer your question.
I just wanted to mention something.
Sorry.
Because I absolutely agree with that. And, it's this aspect as well, that when you have an injury, it automatically affects your brain and how your brain knows that your body is. So your brain knows how your body is constructed. And when there's an injury, your brain knows there was an injury somewhere. And sometimes it has to do as well with a proprioceptive sense, and how, we have to do other things such as somatic practices to connect again, the injured part of the body with the brain and how it represents that part. Because sometimes it's just a misconnection between this part is already healed, But sometimes the information that is being sent to the brain is that it's still damaged, or the brain still thinks it's damaged. So sometimes it's deeper. The level of injury and why the recovery is taking long goes way deeper than just the body. So I wanted to mention that.
Yeah, good. So you backed me up on that. Great stuff. Right, you want to know how difficult it was for me to get from 2016 to where I am now. Well, I banged on a lot of doors. I sent out hundreds of emails and hardly got any replies to them about the workshops for a start. I mean, that was the thing. I mean, my diary is full now, but it's taken what's that, 4 years? Yeah, 4 years, 5 years to be able to get where I am now as someone, you know, the go-to person linking mental health and dancers. Back-to-back clients today, and as I said to you earlier, this is a nice break for me to do this interview when I'm not seeing clients. It's hard work because ideas from America have come across, and in America they talk about psychologists. Well, in the UK, only clinical psychologists and counselling psychologists deal with mental health, and people over here have been brainwashed into thinking all psychologists deal with mental health. Well, it's not the case. Sports psychologists, performance psychologists only deal with those things. They are not trained mental health practitioners. And so that is what I've been fighting as well. So I contacted some vocational schools. Oh, we've got a psychologist in, and I don't want to put them down. I said, okay, all right. I just left it. But you know, the argument is psychologist is not a mental health practitioner, unless in the UK this is. So I don't know about all around the world. I know in America it's different. They are not only clinical psychologists and counselling psychologists are qualified to deal with mental health. And so psychology is, as you probably know, is the way that the mind and the brain works in reactions to certain things. So when you look at what a performance psychologist does, they change the cognitive view of a situation. So performance anxiety, we'll say stage fright, some people call it. You can change someone's way of thinking about going on stage and performing. Well, what you haven't dealt with, and which is what I deal with, is what is the trigger? What's the root cause of the issue that has created that in the first place? And it's very much like giving a aspirin or paracetamol for a headache. You get rid of the headache, but further down the line, the headache comes back, but you haven't found out why you got the headache. And so I take a holistic view of each individual patient, client that comes to see me, because they are unique. I do not deal with therapy that is one size fits all. And so from that point of view, there is a totally different way of working with each individual. So that's what I've been fighting against, the psychologists. I'm not putting psychologists down. I'm just putting a point that there has been a bit of brainwashing happening coming from America, where psychologists work differently there. The other factor is the stigma. Now, there's a stigma around the world about mental health. There's a stigma in the UK, where I come from, in the general population, but more so in show business in total, because everything has to look good. Everything has to be perfect. The glitter, the lights, the makeup, they've all got to be right. You cannot show a weakness. And therefore, schools will say, oh, we haven't got a mental health problem. But you think the number of clients that have come to me from schools and they say, yeah, a load of people have got mental health issues, but we daren't tell anyone because we might not get the next year, you know, as they're going up each year. The same in a dance company. They daren't tell anyone that they have mental health issues, they might not get the contract next year because they're showing a sign of weakness. There needs to be in both schools and dance companies to convey to those dancers and students that there is support. We are open to listen, and it needs to come from the top. So artistic directors or principals in the schools. And it also needs to come from the dancers themselves, the students and the dancers in dance companies. So it meets in the middle. We need this support, the dancers would say, and the ones at the top say, we offer this support and you are not going to be penalized if you come to us. When you think of the people that have got injuries, some long-term injuries, there's support there for them. Some big ballet companies are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on machinery and the number of different practitioners, physical practitioners that they got there. And you can't see anywhere where there's any mental health practitioners who are not dance science orientated either. So yes, in answer to your question, I've had a hard time getting here, and I'm still banging my head against a brick wall in a lot of places. There's boxes that are ticked. Yes, we've got this, we've got, but they don't actually care about it. And some schools don't even have any boxes to tick because they don't. Oh, we don't deal with mental health. No, if someone's got a mental health illness, they'll have to go and find a mental health practitioner. Go and see their GP. Because you go and see the GP here in the UK, there's 6 to 9 months waiting list for mental health help. You need it straight away. You need to go back on stage, or in a week or two if you're feeling really low, depression, anxiety, or whatever else mental health is. Eating disorders, there's a long waiting list for that as well. And eating disorders has the highest mortality rate of any mental health illness. They don't seem to bother about that. They ignore it. This is the shape the dancer should be. And so, the real old school way of thinking. Sorry, I'm getting on my high horse now. I realize that.
Oh, no, please don't apologize. I'm loving to hear everything you have to say. Because, I'm a newbie in the field and I'm doing neuroscience, not psychology, but I face the same challenges as well. It seems that people don't understand that cognition and emotion are interrelated. Cognition, emotion, and motor function. So it's like they want to be perfect and they want dancers to be, on perfect and to be at their best, not realizing that the mental aspect will affect their ability to learn choreography. So it will affect the cognitive level, but also affect the motor level and how the brain processes movement and instructs the body to move. Everything is interrelated. And I think people forget there's this connection, the psychology, the neuroscience, the physiology of the body, everything it's one. For you to do a single movement, you need all of those to work together. And I've faced those challenges as well. And somebody told me as well, at least from my side, but I think it will apply to your side as well, that they said, you telling people that they're doing something wrong, and you coming in and you changing everything and saying how they're doing this wrong and that wrong and that wrong and how these could be done better. And no one wants to hear that. So I think no company wants to hear that they're not doing a good enough job. No place wants to hear that they need to be doing better for mental health or for learning or for neurodiversity. They don't want to hear that. They just want to keep in the box and pretend everything is okay, which is really, really concerning. And I find it interesting that you face and are facing the same challenges that I am, even though we are in different fields related to the brain and the mind, but we are in different fields. And it's so interesting because it goes to show how much there's still an emphasis on the body and how much there's still these barriers and that people don't want to change. So this leads me to my next question. So if right now we are listening, right now people that are listening to us, they either teachers, company directors, dancers. What is the biggest advice you give to them? What is the thing you would want to say to them with regards to mental well-being?
Well, I think I've already said it earlier about,
Yeah.
listening to the dancer's needs. And, right from an early age, from 6 years old for me, as I said, 3 years old for others, we learn in fear. That is our way of learning. So we start off enjoying it from an early age, and then we get to exams. And so there's already a fear there of not passing, of not being good enough. And then as it goes on into teens, then, well, even earlier for me, age 10. So we are learning in fear. We are fearful of getting wrong, and we're being corrected all the time in a non-supportive way. So when I do my workshops, and I've done 4 workshops recently for the RAD, and I'm doing one for the ISTD. Oh, it's this month. Yeah, it's June now, isn't it? Yeah, at the end of June. I say to the participants about the rule of 10. And the rule of 10, this is my rule, others use different numbers, but my rule, the rule of 10 is give 8 compliments to 2 corrections. Now, someone fed back to me that they'd already started doing that. So after the workshop, a few days later, they fed back to me, and she said, "It's amazing. It's amazing. It works." And the reactions that she got from her students just from doing that. And I don't mean 8 compliments and then 2. Mix them in, mix them in a bit. So all we ever hear as dancers is corrections. And then we also fear when we're never corrected. So we're fearing both ways. So for teachers, artistic directors, principals, it's to support the students, support your dancers. I'm sure, if those principals and artistic directors reflected on what they went through, rather than giving the same or rejecting the same thing that they went through, wouldn't it be nice if you could be supportive of your dancers or your students, and you would get a different reaction? I also advocate that in the morning, if it's a full-time school, or even, I suppose, part-time school in the evening, whatever the first class is, a 5-minute meditation. That's all it takes, 5-minute meditation. I have meditation scripts here that I can email people. And that sets them up for their day. There's also short 5-minute meditations just before performances and things like that. So and that is showing that you're supporting your dancers or your students. The students will then feel confident enough to say, "I'm sorry, my grandma died yesterday, and I really don't feel like doing class," or "Do you mind if I just do bar?" or something like that. And so they don't, rather than the teacher saying, "Oh, buck your ideas up, come on, do class and make you feel better." Well, if they've actually said it's not going to make me feel better, then it won't make them feel better. And so it's no good. There's also that there's coming out now, and I think it's been about 5 or so years, Dr. Elaine Aron. Dr. Elaine Aron has a website called hsperson.com. HSP is highly sensitive person. Now, she says in her research that about 20% of the world's population are highly sensitive people. They can't change. So it's no good telling them, pull your socks up, you need a tougher skin to go out into the show business world. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. They then create a different persona around them, and they lose their identity within this persona. So they become somebody else, because that's great to protect themselves. But the thing is, what I've seen in the clients that come to me is that more than 50% are HSP, highly sensitive people. It attracts, the arts attract sensitive people. And so in my practice, I have found that more than 50% are highly sensitive people. It's draining to be HSP because people sort of metaphorically plug into you, offload, pull the plug out and walk away, and then leave you tired and deflated. And so you need to understand what sort of protection that you need, a sort of like an energy field around you, as it were, created by thoughts and visualizations, which is what I do in my therapy sessions. So being a highly sensitive person means that you are vulnerable to other people's negative energy, negative thoughts, negative way of speaking. And so by going onto this website and having a look, there's a test. You can see whether or not you are. And also this. So do discriminate between what is science-based and what's not. I think that will be it for that one. I just wonder, Sophia, whether your listeners will be interested in the app that I'm bringing out this month.
Yes, absolutely. I think so. And when I publish the podcast, I can also add whatever link it is for the app.
Okay, all right. So this app is Help for Dancers, and when I first had the idea of doing it, it was just going to be mental health. I did a couple of surveys, and people said, no, let's have others, and talks on this and talks on that. So that's what I've done. It's 3 sections to it. It's mental health, physical health. So myself, a counsellor in Canada who is a dancer, and an eating psychotherapist that I've got to do. Physical health, we've got osteopath, physiotherapist, a nutritionist, dietitian, and then there's Shelby Williams, biscuit ballerina. She's doing some talk, who runs Minding the Gap. Nico Nistanen, who is the artistic director of Boston Ballet. So there's a varied amount of people and different types from different backgrounds. I've got a business coach, a life coach as well. Lots of articles and short talks by others. Meditation, and that's a basic free app. The paid for app is coming out later with much more content, but this is a sort of a skeleton version, as it were, which is free.
Awesome. It sounds so good, and I don't think there's an app like that, so I think it's so beneficial. So thank you for sharing that, and definitely when I post, then I can provide a link for your work, for your Instagram, your work, and definitely for this app, so dancers who are listening can access to that. I found it really interesting, and I'm just going to comment one last thing that you said, the arts attract the sensitive people, and it's true. The arts will attract people who are dealing with different problems in their lives, who are dealing with mental health problems, who are who really are accessing, especially in dance, for healing purposes. So it's really important that we have all the resources in place. So unless you have anything else to add, Terry, and this is the end of the podcast, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, thank you for inviting me, Sophia. And you can contact me on through my website, counselingfordancers.com. There's an email link if anyone wants to make contact or comment at all. Thanks again, Sophia, for inviting me onto your podcast.
Thank you so much for being here and sharing your insight. It was so great to hear your story and what you have to say about this. So to everyone listening, I hope you have enjoyed the podcast and it has helped you in some way, and I'll see you next time.